welcome back to the Beyond the Bestseller podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Schuknecht, and today's guest is Emily Romero. And Emily, we are going to talk about your second book. You actually have two, but your second book is You Can Trust Yourself. I want to hear about this. Yeah. So welcome, and start out by telling me about your book.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat about the process of writing the book. This book really has been a culmination of my work as a therapist. So I was a trauma therapist for 13 years and really took everything that I saw and did with clients in my individual work and then started to do in group work and retreat work and put it all together in this book. And so that's really the culmination of all of that. You know, it's this idea that what I saw in people coming to therapy was at the heart of what they were seeking was that they weren't trusting themselves. And so they might have come in and said a lot of different things. They were using different words to describe why they were coming to therapy. But as we dug deeper and deeper, realized that the core of it was that they were lacking a connection and a trust in themselves. And so once I saw that and saw that it was happening over and over again with people, I decided to create a framework and a model around guiding, particularly women, back to connection with themselves, connection with their body, and then building up that muscle of trusting themselves. And so that's the entire framework is now in the book.
So why? Okay, super interesting. I had another therapist on a while back. Very different approach. Her book was about how America in Therapy is actually the title of her book, and how everyone needs therapy to heal our nation, basically. Anyways, but in that conversation, I remember talking to her about the fact that I've always looked at therapy as like something I should do, but I've never done it, you know, and not should do because like anything's wrong, but just more of like, I feel, and it's interesting hearing you describe that as like, I think some of it for me is just like, I feel like talking to somebody would help me like talk through some of the stuff that whatever, like I'm going through or questioning or, maybe because I don't trust myself, I don't know. But yeah, so why have you found that people that particularly women don't trust themselves? Like what is going on that's like the root of that issue?
Yeah. And I would say it looks different for everybody. And that was the fascinating thing that I saw is people weren't coming in with the exact same story of how they lost connection with themselves or why they stopped trusting themselves. You know, for some people, it was a very specific moment in time. And I talk about that as like a crisis of trust moment. There was this moment where I learned I cannot trust myself. And so I'm going to seek my guidance outside from now on. I'm going to go external to try to find my answers. And, you know, maybe that was a betrayal, you know, in a relationship or something happened in childhood that disconnected them from their body, which in turn disconnects them from their intuition and that wisdom. And then for a lot of other people, it's been gradual and it's been chipped away over time and they can't point to a specific reason, but it's just happened over and over, this gradual erosion of trust. And that can be really confusing for people. It's like, I don't know why I stopped trusting myself. But when we dig a little deeper and I start to ask questions and they start to, you know, kind of get curious about their life and their journey, they're like, oh, okay, this does make sense. These little moments have all built up to keep me from myself, to keep me from that wisdom that lives in there. So yeah, that's the fascinating part is everybody had a different reason for why. And often it shows up differently too. You know, there's lots of ways that lack of self-trust was showing up in their life. And that's why it was so fascinating to me that it all came back to this thread of lack of trust.
Interesting. Yeah, now you have me questioning some things. I'm like, maybe that's what's going on. So can you tell us about the framework? Or do we have to read the book to find out about that?
No, absolutely. I love to talk about it because, you know, discovering this, really coming to this like realization that, okay, it is this lack of trust and realizing that was my own journey as well. You know, it's kind of this reflective process for me. Once I started to see the themes in my clients, I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense because this was my own journey of, you know, feeling insecure, doubting myself, overthinking everything, you know, kind of stuck in that decision paralysis. Like that's really how it showed up for me, and realizing it wasn't until I started to trust myself that I could feel confident making decisions, and I stopped second guessing myself and stopped doubting myself. But I also knew it wasn't going to be as simple as me telling them like, hey, just trust yourself. That's the answer. Because it's not that easy. It's like the idea of like just trust your gut. Like I love that sentiment, but it's not that easy. And so I knew that people were going to need a framework. They were going to need tools. They were going to need to have an answer to the question of like, but how do you actually do that? And so that's why I created the framework. And I designed it like a compass for a reason, because it's not a simple 4-step solution that you're going to go through these 4 steps and then you trust yourself forever and like, check, we're done. This is an idea that the journey with yourself and trusting yourself gets to be lifelong if you want it to be, because often I've seen when you start to trust yourself more, then you start to, again, act more confidently, you behave more confidently, you make decisions that are more aligned with who you are, and that might actually lead you to some expansive places. That might lead you to some places that you never would have before, that then doubt starts to match those new arenas that you're in. And so then you're like, ooh, and now here's more doubt. And so now I have to work through these directions again. So designed it like a compass because you get to revisit all these directions many times over. But I'll just kind of high level go through the compass with you so you have an idea of what the principles really are around building trust. And so north on the compass is radical honesty. And so this is this idea that we have to get really real with ourselves and get really honest. And if we take into consideration the idea of building trust with somebody else, we don't trust people who lie to us, even if they have really good intentions for lying to us, or even if it's just a little white lie. We don't trust people. That erodes trust. And so the same is true for us. We have to tell ourselves the truth if we want to build that trust. This can be a really hard first step for people because often there's good reasons that we don't want to be that honest with ourselves. Like it can be really confronting to be really honest. And so that's why I do encourage people to, again, work in stages. You don't have to go to all the depths of all the honesty right away, but just starting small and just starting to even ask yourself, like, how much do I trust myself? And I have a guide in there that really walks you through kind of scaling. How much do I trust myself? Where do I trust myself? Where don't I trust myself? And just kind of taking inventory of where you're starting. So you have an accurate starting point to know where you're going to be, starting from. East on the compass is keeping promises. So East is all about following through. We have to do what we say we're going to do to build trust. And again, the same way we're building trust with somebody else, if somebody's constantly flaking on us, we're going to not trust them. And so this idea that in order to build that muscle of self-trust, you have to consistently, over time, follow through on what you say you're going to do. There's a little nuance here that depending on the part of you that set the promise, you may sometimes actually have to break a promise. So it's not quite as clear cut, but that's kind of a deeper layer of, really getting honest with, did you set that promise from connected to your intuition, connected to your, your values and what's right for you in integrity with who you are? Or did you maybe set a goal or a promise or an intention from a part of you that's maybe people pleasing, or a part of you that wants, is more of a perfectionist? And so sometimes those aren't always in integrity with what we actually want. And so sometimes we have to break those promises in order to then set them from a place of more integrity moving forward. So south on the compass is regulation. So this is all about nervous system regulation. So my practice as a therapist was in the world of nervous system and somatic work, which is all body-based. So it's really looking at how our experiences get stored in our body, not just our mind. And so the idea here is it's really hard to trust your intuition if your nervous system is dysregulated. And so the idea of like tuning in, being connected to your body, if it's dysregulated, it's really hard to know, is this my intuition speaking or is this anxiety speaking? And so we really work on a foundational level to bring some more regulation into your body, into your nervous system, more connection there, so that you're able to discern what is what. And then finally on the compass is west, which is knowing yourself. So this is that idea of really getting to know yourself deeply, because we don't trust strangers inherently. And so if you want to trust yourself, you can't be a stranger to yourself. So there's lots of avenues and pathways here that you can get to know yourself. There's many, areas of life that you can know yourself better. And the more that you start to know yourself, the more you can start to like yourself and then build up that trust in yourself. It's building that know, like, and trust factor within yourself. So that's very high level overview of the compass and really the framework that really guides people on this journey.
So I love that. I want to hear like some, I guess when you talk about like the how to know yourself or the I guess I have two different questions here. So on that, but one was at the end of the compass, and one was more towards the beginning. So in the beginning of the compass, let's start there. The keeping promises. Like it made me think of like if I am telling myself I'm going to do something, like I mean for most women it's probably going to be things like exercising, losing weight, I mean other things, but like those are things that we constantly wrestle with, right? Or even just like I'm going to get up early in the morning and do X, Y, and Z, whatever. Those things that we tell ourselves that we're going to do to be better versions of ourselves, and then we don't do or whatever. What do you tell people to do in order to like keep, I don't know, keep yourself accountable to those things? Like what are, I've heard of different types of programs that people have where it's like, you do a quarterly, whatever, like there's different things that you do to check in. So like, what do you teach people to do, like in that framework in order to hold themselves accountable so that they can trust themselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this question because I think you're speaking to a lot of the reasons why New Year's resolutions are not met and maybe they fall off by February. And the reason where I start with people is by getting curious about, again, which part of themselves set that promise, which part of themselves set that New Year's resolution. So your example of, maybe eating healthy or losing weight, my question is like, why do you want to do that? What's the intention underneath that? And is that a deep desire that you have out of integrity to do these things? Or is this a should voice? A lot of times our shoulds set our goals, and that can be really illuminating. Like, oh yeah, I set this goal to, wake up at 5 a.m. or to eat this certain way or move in this certain way. But like, I actually don't want to. Like, that's just what I think I should do. And it's like, it makes a lot of sense then if should is the one who's setting those goals or those promises that you don't follow through. So I have a lot of compassion for those parts that look like self-sabotage when really it's just like, well, yeah, I'm not going to follow through on a thing that's not aligned with who I am and what I actually want. And so we start there at that foundational level of getting curious about who's actually setting those intentions and setting those goals. And the other element of that is once we start to find those more aligned goals and get really curious to figure out like, well, what's actually, if that's not aligned, if that goal that you set isn't actually aligned with you, what actually is aligned? And then how can we start really small? And so those are two more like kind of practical ways that I work with people around that is again, getting really curious about who's setting it and then starting small.
Okay. So then the other question that came to mind when you were explaining that framework was the know yourself. So similar question, but what do you tell people to do there? Like as far as like really getting, I don't know, in tune with their own brain and their own, how do you teach people to really know themselves and get to know themselves better?
Yeah. And this, like I was saying, this area, this direction on the compass, I think has so many, like it's so vast, we can go in a lot of different directions. And I really encourage people to follow where they feel pulled. So follow those curiosities. Where are they actually interested in getting to know themselves better? And so we could talk about, knowing yourself from a physical standpoint, knowing your finances. Like that's one area that people don't know. They don't know what their relationship is with money, or what their relationship is to their finances. So that might be an area that they're curious to learn more about, or they want to change, so maybe they have a goal in that area of finance. And so then we want to start by first knowing their themselves better in that area of finance. Or maybe it is they want to know themselves more spiritually, like they want to access those different parts of themselves. And so starting there just to see kind of like, where are you curious about yourself? Where do you not know yourself? Where do you know yourself? And so again, I think this stage of taking inventory, which is really that radical honesty piece of taking inventory first, because that helps you to know again, where your starting point is going to determine what the path is to get where you want to go. And if you're lying to yourself about where your starting point is, it's just setting yourself up for failure. And so really being honest about like, where is the starting point? Where do I know myself? Where don't I know myself? And I see this a lot when people are coming out of a relationship and they start to realize, oh, I have no idea who I am. Like, it's that idea of, I don't know how I like to take my eggs, because I just, I take scrambled eggs when was with Gary, and then I, like runny eggs, it's like, oh, I don't actually know who I am, because I just morph to whoever I'm with. And maybe it's a romantic relationship. It could be friendships. It could be family relationships. So it's all these dynamics of just becoming a chameleon. And often that, like, it's usually for a very protective reason that you start to become a chameleon and shapeshift to whoever you're around. But you can lose yourself in that protection. You might be protecting yourself from some things, but you're also losing yourself, and you lose connection to yourself. And so, again, people coming out of a relationship, I see that as like a big moment where this can really be heightened, or the awareness around the fact that I don't know who I am can be really heightened. And so one tool that I offer is around dating yourself. And so I actually have created a list, and I can give it to you so you can give it to your audience, but it's basically like 2 solo date ideas per month for an entire year. So you have two dates per month that are kind of like connected to the seasons, connected to whatever is happening that month. And then you take yourself on these dates and you get to know yourself in this way. And the whole goal is also not to love every single date. You're not supposed to love everything that you do, but you're also finding out what you dislike, because connecting to what is a no is a really powerful practice when you're trying to discover what are the yeses that in your life. What is a heck yes for me? I want this. You have to first learn what's a no. And so that's a really fun practice for people, just to start to get to know themselves, is take themselves out on a date and learn who they are. Have as much curiosity about yourself as you would for somebody else that you were wanting to get to know.
Interesting. So I think for me, like all of this, I think about, so I came from a corporate environment. It's really not it just came from a background where I was working for other people. And I think that, like, I was told often who I was, or what I was, whatever. Like, it's like, oh, you're this way, or you don't, things that, like, bosses will say to you, like, you don't like change. It's like, no, I just don't like that you constantly change things, and I have to figure out how to, it's like, whatever. Anyways, but like those kinds of things. And I actually found, when I went out on my own, the first few months in my own business was when I realized, like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like myself for the first time ever in my career. I felt like more like myself, because I didn't have somebody else telling me who I was. Or it's hard. I don't know if I'm describing that well, but like, I remember that feeling of just like, oh, like I felt like I was like kind of put in a box, or told certain things almost in a manipulative way of, like, for them to get what they wanted me to believe that I was a certain way, instead of, like, I don't know how to, anyways. And so, like, for me, just starting my own business was really freeing in this way that I never had anticipated, I never expected. But anyway, that was just like my side note to all of that. I'm still, like, processing the things that you're saying and going, like, I don't know. I don't know if I fully trust myself yet, but I really didn't until I was out on my own.
Yeah.
You mentioned, like, getting out of a relationship. I'm like, I feel like that was my version of that.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I talk about in the book, what I describe as these pathways to self-trust. And so we all have different pathways. So we have different, and a pathway is really anything that you can bring intention to that helps you to know yourself better and trust yourself more. But you're applying all 4 of the directions to that area. And so for you, starting a business, I know for me as well, this is one of my pathways, or has been one of my pathways to self-trust, was entrepreneurship and starting my own business, because there's a lot of people out there, a lot of experts out there that want to tell you how to do it, and they'll tell you how to run a business, but you have to really tune into what's right for you and make mistakes and figure it out on your own. And that absolutely is strength building. It's really building that trust muscle. And so that's just, I resonate to that pathway a lot, because I have been on that entrepreneurship journey, and I think it's one of the biggest, personal growth explorations you can go on. But it's so often you're having to tune back into yourself, and that's so much of that is, what are these experiences that you have that require you to tune back into yourself and listen to the guidance within versus turning over your power to somebody else to have the answer. Just another example of this would be like traveling by yourself. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's a very different experience to travel with friends or family or people that have opinions about what you should do versus traveling by yourself and having to figure out every sticky travel situation on your own, and even having to go in and ask yourself, okay, I have a whole day to myself. What do I actually want to do? Versus, oh, I'm just going to go along with whatever everybody else says. So that it's like all these opportunities to really turn inward and ask yourself these questions, and then again get curious about what bubbles up, like what's the real you that's there.
Yeah. Before we started recording, I had told you I went to a women's retreat a couple months ago, and it was really, I loved the traveling by myself because I traveled. So, I traveled from Colorado. You and I are both in Colorado, from, Denver to Vancouver, then had to take the ferry to Vancouver Islands. It was like a whole thing to get there. And it was just great, like being by myself, because I'm an introvert anyway. So like I enjoy that. But after the retreat was great, but I ended up, it just felt like I was just always with people, didn't really have time to process or think. So I told myself, next time I go, if I go again, if there's another opportunity, I'm going to add on a day or two at the end of it to like just be able to sit with everything I experienced and, reflect. Because even now it's been like a couple months, and of course I brought back everything, like stuck it on a shelf somewhere, and never really processed what I had learned. So I want to take that time, but I want to do that because and then I have like a day or two to just be like, I get to decide where I'm going to eat and what I'm going to do. And
yes. Oh my God. I love that so much. And we were sharing offline the retreats that I used to run. And I always encourage that. That was a big part of the retreats were structured around this idea of solo travel, of everybody having to travel separately and then figure out a lot of those pieces on their own. And there would be chunks of time that were not scheduled intentionally for you to have to do that, of going in of like, there's not a set schedule for, yogas at this time and, lunches at this time. It's like, I have to figure out what I want to do. And then I would always encourage people to either tack on a day at the beginning or at the end, specifically at the end, because it's better for that integration, getting to actually integrate what came up. But having a full day to figure out, okay, this is on me to figure out what I'm doing and what I want and how to make, this meaningful for me. So I could talk a lot about solo travel. That's like a big one I love to talk to specifically women about, because for a lot of women, it's outside their comfort zone. And I love to kind of explore that edge with people and to really, they start to realize like, oh no, I can figure this out on my own. I can actually trust myself to figure out the ferry system and, figure out how to handle all the logistics, and I can figure out what I want to eat. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, I'll be totally honest. I have a friend in Vancouver who figured out all those details for me, but still.
You still have to execute.
It was amazing. She put together this whole itinerary for me of you can stay here and you're going to take this ferry at this time and all that, so it was like, I cheated a little there, but still, I was still traveling by myself that whole time, and I did love it. I don't do that often. I'm married and have 3 kids, and so doing anything by yourself is rare. Yeah. But that was a really great experience. So next time I'm going to say it's Emily told me I have to do this. I have to take an extra day or 2.
I've had a lot of people, I think tell people in their lives like, well, Emily said I have to go to Europe by myself, and I was like, sure, that's exactly what I said. Whatever works. But I also like what you said though about because I talk about this too with specifically with solo travel, is you don't have to jump into the deep end with anything, because if you try to jump into the deep end with anything, it's going to often register in our nervous system as too much, too soon, or too fast, and that can shut us down. And so if there's a lot of pressure, I have to figure everything out, or I'm going to go to a country that I've never been to with a language I don't know and try to do my first solo trip that way, it's like that might send your system into overwhelm, and you might end up in the hotel and not doing anything and not leave for 5 days. And so that idea of, you had some kind of some steps to support you in it. So you were still traveling by yourself, but hey, there's somebody here who's helped me with the itinerary, who's helped me to figure out some things. So it feels more supportive. And so you don't have to do it all at once. You know, you can take yourself to dinner, you can take yourself to a movie, you know, start small and build up those muscles more gradually.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and for anyone that is trying to navigate travel like that, my biggest tip right now is ChatGPT. That is so helpful for for planning. Because I went to Portugal, not by myself. I brought my son with me a couple months or last month, but I planned my whole itinerary on ChatGPT and like figured out where was the best place to stay, what places we could go that had a gym, because I knew he would want a gym. And I mean, it was so fantastic. I came up with the entire agenda like in, I don't know, less than an hour. And yeah, so that took a lot of the overwhelm out of it. Yeah.
It's a good use of ChatGPT. And then again, anytime I think there's external advice, whether it's from ChatGPT or from, somebody else who has been there, I see that as just another opportunity to tune in and build that trust with yourself. It's all feedback. So you get to see how your body responds. Like ChatGPT has this itinerary and you're like, okay, that part sounds really good. Like I feel that like pull in my body to like, yes, that feels good. And then other parts you might have oh, that sounds terrible. But that tuning into your yeses and your nos and your body is a big practice in building up those discernment muscles. And ultimately that's what builds self-trust, is being able to discern what's a yes in my body, what's a no. And again, being able to trust yourself to confidently make those decisions and to honor those yeses and nos.
Yeah. Love it, Emily. Well, I will link to your book, You Can Trust Yourself, in the show notes. How else can listeners or viewers learn more about you, connect with you, and find you online?
Yeah, so my business is curiosityrising.com. I'm no longer taking therapy clients, but I am working with other, whether it's therapists or coaches or other practitioners who want to really utilize this model. So I'm doing a lot more training and certifying people in using the model. So if people are interested in that, whether for themselves as an individual or for an organization, you can reach out to me and discuss kind of those opportunities there.
Nice. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your book. And I look forward to reading it because it seems like one that's helpful to any woman at any stage of life. It's just something that I think we all should read as our own self-care. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Looking for a community of women writers to support and inspire you on your journey? Join the Author Power Circle. Connect weekly with fellow authors, stay accountable, and move your book forward in an encouraging community. Learn more at kellyschuknecht.com.